Well, thank you everyone for joining us. I know we've got people logging on. We also have people watching the recording of this. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. I am Dr. Leah Jeanette. I am the director of the Master's in Bioethics and Medical Humanities program here at Case Western Reserve University. We are located in Cleveland, Ohio. We are one of the first Master's in Bioethics programs in the country. And this upcoming fall, we'll actually be celebrating our 30th anniversary of the program, which is really exciting. I am really excited by today's webinar. So we are joined by 3 alums of the program. I actually can correct myself and say 4 alums because I also did this master's program. I'm class of 2009. So it's pretty cool that all 4 of us are alums of the program. So we're going to get started just by having the panelists introduce themselves. They're going to provide their name, what year they graduated, and what they're currently up to. And then we're just going to talk about the program, their perspectives, how it impacted them, advice they might give for prospective students, that kind of thing. So thank you, Emily, Jacoby, and Fela for joining us. Fela, I'm going to start with you. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, everyone, and those who are watching later. My name is Fela Jr. I am a 2018 graduate. Feels like a long time ago, but yes, that's me. And right now I am a third year doctoral student at Duquesne University, studying healthcare ethics.
Jacoby, will you please go next?
Hi, everyone. I'm currently a 1L at Case Western Reserve School of Law, so just down the street. I am the class of 2023. I actually graduated in August.
That's right, you did. Because of study abroad.
Mhm.
That's right. Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily Letting. I graduated this last spring in 2024, and I am now in medical school at the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences.
Awesome. So thank you, as I said before, thank you all for being here. As you can see just from the directions that our panelists are currently in, this program has a very much an interdisciplinary focus, and folks go on to a myriad of different directions. So we've got kind of the 3 distinct areas that we see most commonly, which is a PhD, a JD, and an MD. So it's pretty exciting. There's other paths that students take as well. So I guess I want to start at the beginning and talk about your decision to actually enroll in the program, right? So a lot of the people who are watching this are thinking, do I apply? Is this going to be a good fit for me? Why should I enroll, right? So kind of go back to right before you started the program. So what I would like to start with is what led you to bioethics and medical humanities? Why was this something you wanted to study in our master's program? And any one of you can answer.
Oh,
I can go. So I was applying for medical schools, and one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I did was if I didn't get in, then what was that next option? What can basically further prepare me for medical school? And then I got the email from Case Western just about their bioethics program. And I remember talking to my mom about it, and we just had this moment of say, okay, I think that you should really try this. Spoiler alert, I didn't get into med school and I applied, I got in, and really I think that what the bioethics program did for me was expand my horizons beyond medicine. I think whenever I thought about medicine previously, it was really about just trying to be somewhere in either you're a doctor or you're a nurse, but really expanded it to say, oh my goodness, I could be an ethicist, hence where I am kind of now. And I think that's what really drew me to it. And it also brought me to thinking about medicine in a different way rather than just kind of thinking about it in the science mind that I had, but really kind of just expanded my brain a little bit. And uh, the rest is pretty much history from there. So,
Great.
I guess I can go.
Yeah.
So, like Fela, I wanted to go to med school, but my undergrad years were during the pandemic, so Zoom university. And I knew I was not ready to go to med school, even though I really thought I wanted this. So, like her, also got the email and I sent it to my parents and I was like, what about this? Like, how does this look? And I remember during, I guess, the interview for the program, Dr. Jeanette called it a productive gap year. And I thought, oh, okay, I can do this, study for the MCAT, this, that, and the third. So I took the chance and applied and got in, and I did it, and I absolutely loved it.
Awesome.
I got plugged in with kind of loosely ethics. My senior year of high school, I wrote a thesis on the opioid crisis, and then that kind of lingered in the back of my head of being vaguely interested in the topic of medical humanities and bioethics. And then I was applying for summer research here in Arkansas between my junior and senior year of college, so about 4 years later. And I just happened chance to get matched with an ethicist for my summer research, and I really fell in love with the thinking that Phayla was talking about in terms of bioethics. And so I knew that I probably wanted to go into medical school, but I wasn't quite sure because now my interest was being piqued elsewhere. I ultimately stuck with it because I realized that whether you do a PhD, a JD, an MD, you can still be in the ethics sphere in some capacity. And so I stuck with my gut, and I'm really glad I did. But more specifically, what led me to Case Western is my mentor for that research that summer gave Case Western a huge shout out, and he said that that's probably the best place in the country to go for your master's in ethics, and that led me on my way, and I was very pleased with what I got out of it.
I love like hearing these stories. And I'm sure from Phayla and Jacoby, they can verify that the email came from me, probably. Uh, but it just shows you that people find case in different ways. Their initial goals coming to the program may be one thing and it may shift to something else. Or in like Emily's case, you have someone who recommends it or highlights it. And you still continue on the career path you intended, but you're adding to it, which I think is what having a 1-year master's program really allows for our students. It's not a huge long-term commitment. I joke that you can do anything for a year. That's not an exactly true statement, but that's how I think about our program. So I guess I want to move on to then tell us about your time in the program. Do you have a favorite memory or a favorite class? Um, I guess, or maybe what did you even wish you knew about the program before starting?
I guess I can go first. Favorite memory? Probably my study abroad, because like
Okay.
I said, I did Zoom University, so I had this whole plan to study abroad in undergrad, and that unfortunately got taken away from me. But and this is also hand in hand with my favorite class along with foundations, but I loved my study abroad. I did the death and dying study abroad in Amsterdam and with Dr. John Fry, and I absolutely loved every second of it, and just led me to pursue more of a policy-based bioethics rather than like a medicine-based one. And I also like foundations because it did open my eyes to a different or these different subsets of bioethics and just how many inner workings and interweavings apply to bioethics and research ethics.
That's great. Can I ask you a follow-up question about the study abroad? Was there something specific on the study abroad course that you really liked? Because
So for Oh,
there's a lot of
sorry.
opportunities on the study abroad, right? You do site
Mhm.
visits, you meet with expert speakers, you do tours of things. So is there something that you're like, oh, this like I was made me so excited on that study abroad course?
I think our site visit, we went to Leiden which is like a small medical city close. I guess the only thing there is the medical school, so they call it a medical city. And we got to speak to a bunch of doctors and researchers that take part in the euthanasia process for people and the background checks for euthanasia and all of that, and just hearing it from their perspective was actually one of my favorite things. And then we got to interact with the different medical students that were there too. And we got to, I guess, learn things from their perspective on medicine and bioethics as a whole. So that was my favorite part.
I think what you said is really important, right? When we so oftentimes in a classroom setting, we talk about different perspectives, and the instructor may have one perspective or experience. Other students in the class may have different experiences, but it's also nice to hear from people who have like vastly different experiences from like a cultural perspective, right? Not just being from the US, but also having this international perspective. And to them, their perspective is the norm, right? It's what they're used to. And so it's really nice to have that engagement. And we try to offer at least 2 study abroad courses every spring, one over spring break and then one in May for our students. And we have great interest in those. So I'm excited that Jacoby, that's what you mentioned. Yeah. Emily or Fela, do either one of you want to share a favorite memory or a favorite class?
I liked all of my classes. It's really it was really hard to choose personally. I took environmental and occupational health ethics, which I don't know if I found it as interesting as maybe aging and ageism, because that's more pertinent to like my everyday student life as a medical student. But um, it was one of those things that you don't think about how much the environment kind of gets, I don't want to say like environmental ethics gets pushed under the rug in terms of like the large whole of bioethics, but I never really even thought to explore that and how that then in turn relates to occupational health. And it was really neat because we had an occupational health physician who also co-led the class, and it was really neat to learn from her. So.
It's great. So I think what's really cool about what you're referencing is we have a number of different electives that students can take. In addition to study abroad, we have courses that are 3 credits like aging, ageism, and embodiment with Dr. Lamb. But then we have these mini electives that are 1.5 credits, and some of them are like the first half of the semester, some of them are an hour or so a week for the whole semester, some are weekend intensives or things. So some of them can even be like a hybrid, so sometimes in person, sometimes on Zoom. So it really allows for more flexibility, but also I love what the mini electives allow, which is like a more niche area, but you aren't committing to like a full semester of 3 credits. And so I love that we can do these mini electives. We have mini electives that focus in, as was mentioned, environmental ethics and occupational health, but also correctional health care, racial justice and medicine. We've even had courses like Star Trek and bioethics as a mini elective. So we can, we even get creative, and as instructors, we do things that like are just pure fun as well. Fela, do you have a favorite memory or favorite class?
Yeah, I have maybe a mixture. Also, the fact of, I don't know that we had many electives when I was there. So the fact that that's something that's there is amazing. Can I come back? Um, my favorite, I think, memory was just being able to do intramurals. So I think that was something that a couple of us just decided to do, and our name was Thunderscore, so TH, and then our person just did like an actual underscore. So it was just like the weirdest thing, like so nerdy but fun to do. And I think the fun part that came out about that was each of us had different sports that we kind of excelled at, and then we just chose a different one. Once the season was over, we just did a new one. So I thought that was fun. And then that led to us almost kind of, well, I knew I wanted to do a study abroad. So then, like, we were talking about it one day, and a bunch of us from that intramural team went to do actually the death and dying one as well. So I thought that that was really cool to one, just make one way to make friends, and then two, do something that was abroad together as well. So I thought that that was really cool. And then as far as my favorite class, I would say I did the Medicine Society and Culture um, track. And I think the course that was dedicated to that was probably one of my favorites because being very sciencey minded, I never really thought I could dig deeper, I guess, into my writing or something like that. And so I think one of the things that thought it was very challenging. It's like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of reading. This is a lot of writing happening. But at the same time, the feedback that I got on my papers, I think was really just a motivator. It was not, hey, this was terrible. Like, you're never going to excel. It was, hey, this was good. This is how you can make it better. So it felt marginal. Like every single week you could get better, even though the topic was changing. And I think that that was also part of that critical thinking, part of diving deeper into just the ethics of it all, of course, but medicine, society, and culture, and then how to push yourself as well. So that was my favorite course and favorite memory.
That's awesome. So I think what I love about everybody's answers is they're so different. So Fela, I love that you mentioned kind of the camaraderie and the friendship that can be built in this program. I think some people have concerns of coming into a one-year program that it takes time to get to know people, like how well can you really get to know someone in a year, right? Those kind of things. But it's surprising that students are willing to like show up, they know it's a year, they dive in right away. Um, every class has its unique interests. And so in, yeah, Fela's year, they did intramurals. We've had other years where students have done ski weekends or apple picking, or they've gone to sporting events, or just eating good food, or exploring, Playhouse Square, or just different things that the city has to offer. And I will say in the program, we have a good mix of people who are from Case Western undergrad, and also new to Case Western Reserve and even Cleveland. And so you get this good mixture of people who know the fun things to do and people who are exploring. And so it's a really cool way to kind of do this program. Um, and then you mentioned that we have concentrations. I think this is something that we haven't talked about yet, but within the 1 year, students can have, you're not required to do a concentration, but students can choose. And so, as Fela mentioned, the medicine, society, and culture concentrations probably are our most popular. And we have research ethics, and then 2 years ago, we added health policy. So now we have 3 concentrations. Okay, so I want to move us forward a little bit. And it's a question that I did kind of reference, but is there something you wish you knew before you started the program, right? So looking back on it, we try to provide as much as we can to support you as you arrive, but then there's things that you don't know that you don't know, and your things you wish you would have known. So yeah, is there something that comes to mind?
I would say that I really love that Emily had exposure, I think, in high school, to ethics, because I think that that's such a cool thing. So I didn't have really exposure until um, I was out of college. So I think one of the things that I wish I would have known was more about that bioethics, I think, existed, because I think then maybe I could have got here a little bit sooner, but that just wasn't for me. But I think that that's probably one of the things that I wish I had known more about, just about the field in general.
Yeah.
And I think just the complexities, just really beyond um, uh, nurse, doctor, again, like I said earlier, like healthcare admin, just that those various levels of healthcare that you can enter. So I think that that really broadened my horizons once I got on campus, and really just seeing just the different perspectives that are out there has only, I think, helped me to grow as a human, but also to grow in my field of healthcare ethics specifically.
Yeah, that's great.
I wish, like Fela said, I wish I had a earlier exposure to ethics and everything that came along with it, not necessarily bioethics, but I mean, I like medicine, I like science, so bioethics. And I wish I knew just how much you could do with a background in bioethics, because you really are open to anything. Even like all 3 of us here, or I guess all 4 of us here, we are all in these different avenues. And even now, as a 1L applying to jobs, I can say like in my cover letter, like, oh, my background in ethics allows me to do this, that, and the third. And usually when I get calls and stuff, they're like, oh, explain your bioethics background. Like, what is that? That's interesting. So it's just a good talking point as well. And it also allows you to, I guess, read things with a different mindset too, because a lot of case law um has me thinking like, oh, this is not good. This is not ethical. What are we doing here? So I just like that shift in perspective that it gave, but I wish I had been exposed to it more, or I guess earlier.
Yeah.
Um, as a Southerner, if anyone's from the South or where it's really warm, it is really cold in Cleveland. That's a very important thing to know, but it's manageable with a nice long coat. And but on a more serious note, I think having goals going into the program is really important. So for me personally, my goal is not necessarily to do a concentration. My goal was more to just learn as much as I can about a lot of different fields because I know in medicine I'm going to see disabled people. So I took a disability in society class. I knew I was going to see people with various mental health conditions. So I took a mental health ethics class, whereas some people knew that they maybe wanted to go to law school and took the policy concentration a little bit, went down that route, or some of the people who wanted to go to medicine into medicine did the medicine society and culture route. I strayed away from that because like I said, I just wanted to take more of a wide variety rather than concentrating. And I think it's very easy to know that like once a lot of people there or once you're all there, a lot of people want to do these concentrations and it's a great thing to do, but if you are wanting to, if that's your goal, don't be jaded by everybody else having this concentration. Stick to your guns. And I think I'm so much more prepared now as a student dealing with a wider variety of people. And I volunteer, I mean, at my school's free clinic, and I think that it has paid off phenomenally in that area, having had such a wide variety of ethical topics that I talked about.
That's great. So I think you said something that's really profound, and that's coming in with goals, right? So students can come into this program with a goal in mind, right? Exposing yourself to a lot of things or diving deep into something you're super passionate about. Or the one we see pretty consistently, it's not the majority of students, but it's pretty consistent, is using this program for discernment, right? So knowing you may want to be in some health related field, but you don't know if that means medical school or law school or social work or genetic counseling, right? There's a lot of options, but coming in with the mindset of I'm going to explore. I'm going to meet with people that do these careers and maybe ask them questions, or I'm going to take advantage in the clinical ethics rotations to rotate at every opportunity that's on the thing that's on the required list and the optional list, right? Fela, you actually come to mind when I still use you as an example when I have students who say, am I allowed to do more than 80 hours? And I'm like, no one will beat Fela.
I know.
Because I
That's a
think
little too much. Sorry, but I
no,
love it.
I think it was great because you were super passionate about learning healthcare across the whole system. So you're my example of the person who you did all the requirements, you did all the optional things, and then you went back to things a second time because you were like, oh, that was interesting. I want to be I want to go into a more critical eye the second time. And I think that's such a great thing that this program offers is this opportunity. But I think having a goal, and the goal can change, right, from first semester to second semester. But I think it's important to kind of think about what am I hoping to get out of this program as you're coming. I think that's so great.
Can I say
So
something too?
yeah, please.
I'm gonna also say that Emily's very right. Like I am also from the South. And like the best though was when I
Me
came
too.
in. Yes, so oh my gosh, we're all Southerners. So whenever I came in though, I just remember sitting in Michelle's office and we were like on Land's End, just like finding like different jackets. She was like, "Oh, girl, like, that is not that's not gonna work for you." So I think that that's like the cool part too. And I think one of my roommates is from the north, so helped me find boots. So I thought that that was like a really cool thing too. That it wasn't just academic; it was also an interest in your personal life and making sure that when you're walking to campus, you're not frozen as well. So I thought that that was really amazing too.
Oh, that's great. I love that example. So since we were talking about goals a little bit, how did this program affect or change your career path or confirm your career path? Um, and to kind of add on to that question, is where you are where you started, or has it changed, right? Jacoby, do you want to start? Because I think like you might have had the biggest shift.
Yeah, so I remember talking to you during my interview and I was like, I want to go to med school, I want to go to med school. And then I graduated from the program and I was like, oh, I want to be a bioethicist. This is pretty cool. I want to do this. So then I took another gap year, did like all that I can, only to find out that, most bioethicist positions require a terminal degree, which is either a JD, an MD, or a PhD. And I already crossed MD off the list. I didn't want to do that anymore. So I was considering a JD or PhD, and my advisor was O'Mary Dwyer, who had her JD. And I was talking to her during this gap year, and I just settled on law school. So I took the chance, applied to Case, and they said, "Yeah, come in." Now I feel like my path has changed even more from medicine because I've been applying to everything under the sun and using my bioethics degree and applying that to it. So at first I thought I wanted to do medical malpractice, and then that shifted to medical malpractice defense because that was my capstone project, was physician burnout and the rates that happens with patients and patient care and hospital regulations. And now, like I said, I've just been applying and having interviews everywhere. I think yesterday I had an interview with a construction company for their in-house counsel, and I was excited. Like, I'll do construction. I also had an interview with Cleveland Metro Park, so the zoo, and that's also like I'll do that. I'll do anything that comes my way if I can just
There's a whole
apply
area of
bioethics
animal
to it.
ethics. Yeah, like I love this. I love that like this has allowed you to kind of expand what it means to think about bioethics and ethics in general as you think about using the law. Like I think that's incredible. Also, if you so get a job at the Metro Parks, we are meeting up at the zoo because I love the Cleveland
That was
Zoo.
one of the selling points. They said I could go look at the animals when I get bored. So
I love the Cleveland Zoo. I live pretty close to it, so it's a nice like this morning I'm gonna go for a walk. I'm gonna go walk at the zoo.
Yep.
Fela or Emily?
I stayed consistent with starting off thinking I was going to go to medical school and ending up in medical school. Um, Largely in due to the part that I think I had already applied to medical school before I even started the program,
Sure.
and sent all of my secondaries before I even got to Cleveland. So I think that part of that swayed my decision. However, there's always the option for an MD PhD, and you can do your PhD wherever. And I keep joking that maybe I might go down that path. So I think that. Um, it didn't necessarily change where I'm going, but it opened my mind up to like how much I really enjoyed the class. And I even emailed Dr. Jeanette the other day and was like, I kind of miss this. This is nice. And so never say never.
Yeah. Was there something about the program that then confirmed that you should be in medicine or go to medical school?
I it's really easy to get imposter syndrome in medical school and applying, and I kept second guessing myself, but the clinical hours that we did, I was matched with Metro, and for the people watching, that is a level one trauma center in Cleveland. And I spent several hours. I even went over the 80 minimum as well because I could not get enough of the emergency department. I loved that place. It's such a dreary place in all reality because it's people coming in with really serious medical emergencies there, but I couldn't get enough, as well as oh, I can't remember his name now, but he's the physician who helps with the burn unit at Metro. And he is I think he said he was like 92 or 93-year-old physician who volunteers his time to still help with the burn survivor group, as well as, I guess, weekly rounds. He listens in and kind of gives feedback. And he always gives you the most encouraging words and kind of sets you on the path. He is very happy wherever you end up, but he really encouraged me that I have the capabilities and the brains and the strength to pursue medicine. And he kept telling me that he views me as a surgeon, and that might be where I'm heading, so who knows? And I think
Yeah.
that the clinical hours really helped solidify that for me.
Yeah, you were referencing his name is Dr. Frediani. He goes by Dr. Frat.
Dr.
Yeah.
Pratt.
So yeah, Dr. Frat
Everything.
started the burn unit at Metro many decades ago. And even when he stepped down from being the head of the burn unit and eventually retiring from practicing medicine, he still, as you said, continues to be involved with the burn unit. The knowledge that he has and the history that he brings and the expertise is amazing. And one of the things he does is he meets with our students as they're experiencing the burn unit, because the burn unit is tough. It is a tough emotional experience. It's a tough visual experience. And it's different than emergency medicine or other ICUs. And so I really appreciate that he brings that for students. So that's awesome.
Can I
Fela?
add one
Oh
thing?
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm glad you brought up the clinical hours at Metro, Emily, because I also did more than I was supposed to do just because I love being at Metro. But I spent like most of my time in the burn unit, and I'm so sad they got rid of the psych unit or like they didn't get rid of it, but they stopped doing the psych rotation hours, and I was
Yeah,
so
they closed
disappointed
it
because I
off.
loved
Yeah,
it. But I also applied to in-house counsel at Metro, and I heavily referenced I spent a lot of my time there shadowing, so please let me in, please. I promise. I know what I'm doing.
that's awesome. Fela?
Yeah. For me, I finished the program and I think that I was just in that, okay, what am I going to do kind of phase. So I ended up teaching for a couple of years before I think I was just really, I just couldn't get, I think, healthcare ethics out of my brain. And I think mentally I needed to also prepare to do a doctoral degree because I'm here. I'm like, oh, well. So I'm glad I
It's a
took that
lot.
time to do it. Exactly. So I think one of the things that I think maybe I even talked to you about Duquesne, where I am right now, because you're a Duquesne alum. So I think that that was really helpful just to kind of figure out, okay, what does it entail? What can I do with it? And I think even now, kind of getting to, I'm in the proposal phase now, just trying to think about what I'm going to do next. So even though I'm here, I think there's still the possibilities of, okay, am I going to do academia? Am I going to do the clinical side? Or kind of like what Jacoby was saying, there are also so many other realms where I think you can do ethics. So that's not in a hospital and that's not also in the school. So I think just exploring the different possibilities, but still just kind of sticking with healthcare ethics because I do have a passion for it right now teaching. I love it. I think my students, like helping them learn, kind of what Emily was saying, if like you have that early exposure that I didn't have and just kind of taking that and bringing that to them is really fun. So I think that it definitely being in the program changed my trajectory of, I knew, I think after that program, I didn't want to be in medicine because to me, or in like go to med school at least, because I think I was putting myself in a box. And then I think after being in a program, I feel like I don't know, I'm not in a box anymore. Like I can do it all, right? As long as it's associated though with healthcare ethics, bioethics, right? That's where I want to be.
Yeah,
But I think like just it's seeing that there are so many possibilities, and I just love where I ended up. So yeah.
that's great. So I have a very similar story to Fela in that I came in thinking I was pre-med, and by the end of this program, I was like, I actually think what I like about healthcare is bioethics. And so for me, it
Yep.
also changed my career trajectory, and I ended up pursuing the PhD in healthcare ethics at Duquesne, where Fela is a current student. But even once I had my degree and was working, my career has changed. So I started out as a clinical ethicist and I did that full time for 2 years. And now I've transitioned into more of the educational space. So directing the master's program and doing administrative work, but also still doing clinical ethics part time, but not full time anymore. So but teaching more too. So, even once you find yourself, in your career, things can change and grow. And I think that's great. And bioethics really gives you that flexibility. It can add to the body of knowledge that you have. So it's incredible. So, I guess the next thing is to talk about, how you're and we've kind of referenced this a little bit so far. How are you using bioethics and or medical humanities kind of in the work you're doing or in what you're studying? Are you working on something that's specific to these, or is it more kind of what Jacoby said, which is like it's enhanced what she's doing? Right. So I'd love to hear that. If you guys have some details you want to share.
I've applied. My medical school offers honors tracks, and so one of the honors tracks is honors in medical humanities and bioethics. So I've actually applied for that, and I am hoping to get in. As of now, we haven't heard back yet because we just applied last week. Um, and if I get into that, we do some deep dives into like the history of medicine, so and how like art can kind of shape your ability to pick out diagnoses. So I'm excited for that, and I will write yet another capstone if I do that. And I am hoping to gear that capstone. I wrote my capstone at Case Western about neonatology in the NICU in terms of like how environmental things kind of impact healthcare inside of the NICU. Um, and I'm hoping, I don't think I'm going to be a neonatologist anymore, but I'm hoping that the capstone then will, in the future, will be more related to maybe what I choose. I'm involved in research, and so one of the research topics that we are hoping to get to in the future, but we're not quite there yet, we just started the project, is about social determinants in health and how that relates to cancer diagnoses and subsequent, like whether the person dies, lives, and the outcomes of that. And I think having a background in ethics got me into medical school, first of all, and it also is helping me get opportunities within medical school, like the research or hopefully like the honors track. Um, I also think, like I just said, I think that a lot of programs, whether you apply JD, PhD, etc., even if you don't apply PhD in specifically bioethics, it really enhances you as an applicant. And like I, my entire medical school interview was about my ethics program. I got asked the hardest question of my life. I got asked what I think the single most like the biggest ethical issue in medicine and how I would fix it if I attended my medical school. And like,
That's a huge question.
it is a huge question, but they were so fascinated by somebody who can go beyond, beneficence, non-maleficence, justice, autonomy. And I think that that's important to know going in.
That's awesome. Thank you.
I think, well, I'm in healthcare ethics, so it is like what I do all the time. But I think that I think what the program helped me do was, right now I'm teaching healthcare ethics. So I think that that is really being a part of the program and seeing different teaching styles. Because I always say I'm a culmination, what's that word? Cul
Culmination.
Thank you. That's gonna be on the internet forever. Of people. It happens to me also in class, and my students are like, they help me with the like, thanks, guys. Um, so I think that just the different courses that I was able to take, so rotations, I think helps a lot. I think that foundations was really good, MSc, and then clinical theory and practice. Each of those, I think there's a little bit of each of the way that that teaching style was that I bring into my courses to help my students learn. But I think it also um, is helpful for the graduate students that that are in my program as well. So when I'm presenting something, I'm trying to think of ways in which that was presented to me, and then with my own research, present it in a way that's accessible. And I think that that's one of the things that I try to do, whether it's for my undergrads, graduates, or professionals, just being able to bring that accessibility and teaching style molding it into, of course, bringing my own personality to it has been really, really helpful for where I am in my program, but also where I think I see myself moving forward, right? I think it's very beneficial in those areas of presentation styles, really.
Great.
Don't hate me, please. Can you repeat the question just so I can make sure I
No,
hit
it's fine. We've
everything?
kind of taken our time. So we were talking about how bioethics and or medical humanities, like how are you using it either in your current job or in your studying? Like, are you, doing research or are you teaching or is it and you've kind of answered this a little bit already in talking about how it's kind of widened your perspective on the different types of law that you can potentially practice.
Hmm. So in my networking at law school, a lot of people ask me like what my education is, and so of course I tell them. And it always goes back to bioethics, like, oh, what does that entail? How did you like it? Like, what even is that? I've never heard of that. And it's always a good talking point with interviewers and with, I guess, just my peers
Mhm.
and teachers, professors, mentors, everybody I talk to who happens to glance at my resume. Um, I feel like it made me kind of a jack of all trades, if
Mm.
I'm being honest, because like I said, going back to that construction company that I interviewed with, I can do labor and employment, I can do workers' rights, workers' compensation, that those kinds of things. And or if I just strictly want to stick with health law, I can do policy, I can do medical malpractice, prosecution or defense. I can do research, I can do in-house counsel. I can really feel like I can do anything with it. Because ethics is a broad, I guess, topic, and it changes your mindset almost in a way that is, I don't want to say different to your peers, but I think I'm the only one in the 1L class right now currently who has a degree in bioethics. I know there's one girl who is signed up to do it her 2L year, the master's program. And she's really excited about that. But it just, I feel like it's giving me like not only the confidence to pursue what I want to pursue, but sort of, I guess, another interesting talking point and another research point because I started, I'm on the Yemen Accountability Project because of my ethics background. I'm on um, graduate student council, I'm on student bar association, and I just feel like it's just opened so many doors for me and given people something else to look at with me.
That's great. I love that all the answers are different, and yet you can see the common theme of like this really can help build your knowledge base and experience and your network and opportunity from just a 1 year master's program. I think that's pretty incredible. Um, and Jacoby, you did reference something which I think is pretty fun, and that we have dual degree students in our program. So while everyone here did it in a 1 year time frame, we do have students who do this alongside the JD program at Case or the MD program, Masters of Public Health, Masters of Social Work, Masters in Genetic Counseling, and an MSN, so a Master's of Science in Nursing. So we do have those variety of students in the program as well. And I think for students like that, they also are seeing the value of like, my plan is to be a physician or a genetic counselor, but they can see where bioethics and medical humanities is going to give them a greater perspective. It's going to make them more empathetic and compassionate. And I think it helps us be better critical thinkers. It helps us to often ask the question of like, is there a perspective I'm missing here? Right? Is this perspective or the discussion we're having too narrow? Is there something else that we should be including? Very famously, one of our professors, Dr. Patty Marshall, she's now an emeritus professor. But we often hear that phrase of, who should be at the table, right? And the thing that she became a champion for throughout all of her career is who's not at the table. Like, right, basically like it's easy to say who should we put on the table, and then sometimes it narrows your perspective. But when you put your table together, then you ask the question of like, who's missing? Like who's not here that should be here? And so I love that that's something that the program has championed, and thankfully, we have Patricia Marshall, Dr. Marshall, to credit that for. Okay, so I have kind of one final thing for us to talk about, and that's just final thoughts. So if you had someone say to you, "Oh, I'm thinking about doing the master's in bioethics and medical humanities program," what would you tell them? Like, just you can go in any direction with this, but how would you respond to that?
I have two things that I could say right off the bat, and if I think of
Yeah.
it, I'll chime in at the end. But the first is, no matter if you're using this to go into a professional degree like JD, MD, PhD, etc., this is a good opportunity to have a transitional year of increasing your workload from undergrad to graduate, and then going from, a graduate master's to a graduate that's slightly harder. And I think that that helped me personally transitioning into med school because it's a different kind of work, just anatomy and memorization and getting in there, and they equate it to drinking water out of a fire hydrant, and that's really what it is. It's a little bit different, but I think Fela mentioned it earlier, where it's like we did a lot of reading, and that's not necessarily as dense of information, but it's time consuming in a different way. And I think that that was very helpful just as a development perspective. And then also, I think Case Western does do a really good job of getting like in these classes of 30 to 60 people, because some people do it over the course of 2 years. You have undergrads, you have people who are in medical school, you have people who are in law school. We had genetic counseling school, we had nurses, we had current physicians, we had people who were transitioning. And then my favorite of all of the people is we had a lovely classmate who was in his 70s, I believe, and was a Vietnam veteran, and he was just there because he loves to learn, and he just wants to learn and get I think this was his third master's, if I remember correctly, second or third. And he, like, everybody just adds a slight different perspective, and he was like the one that sticks out, and he'd be like, well, actually, I think differently because my experience in Vietnam taught me that you do have to believe in a religion and have to equate and integrate religion into this. And it's really easy to get into just a science mode, or just a purely non-religion mode, or purely religion mode. And he kind of opens your mind. And it wasn't just about that. There's other people who brought in their cultures because they were born and raised in a different country, and came to the United States at around 10, 12 or older. And they brought in a different perspective about, like, Western medicine isn't like the only way of practicing medicine, and open your perspective on how medicine might look to them in a different way. And there's a wide variety of people, and I think that that's really important going forward just as a human in our society.
Thank you so much.
I say if you are considering, well, let me see how I want to phrase it. If you are thinking about a professional degree, or I guess just something to widen your perspective, honestly, I say do it, because I've been happy ever since I've taken the master's program and finished it. And I've had all these experiences. I met great people. I keep in contact with great people. Um, I'm trying to think. I don't see a downside. I mean, it does cost a lot. Money exists, but
Yeah.
if you can, I say do it, because it can only, I guess, it can either reaffirm the path you want to take, like Emily, or it can completely change your path, like me, or like it can find a new passion, like Fela. And like sometimes we just need a little bit of guidance, and I think this program was great at giving guidance.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with both Emily and Jacoby. I think that definitely the perspective part of it, but like you're going in, I think one, definitely do it. And then two, I think that going in with the perspective of like I think just meeting people, I think was one of my favorite things to do. And just like going, I think especially the transition. So you have like this um undergrad life. So I think workload, yes, for the professional, but also like trying to figure out like what your adult self is at that next level too. And how you make friends as an adult, I think is with people that are of all different ages, and how you're kind of in this undergrad world maybe of like, oh, everyone's like kind of similar ages, and then you get to this area where you're like all different kind of ages sometimes when in the professional world. So one, the perspectives, but then making just learning how to make adult friends. But then you're all there for like this collective goal of learning, which I think is something that's really special. And then I think one of the things that not just going there to learn about like other people's perspective, but one of the things I think that's my favorite is both my parents, you know, I'm 30 now, but when I was there, I was like 25, and like they were like, you are just like changing. Like they could see my mind starting to work in a different way. Both of them are degreed, and so they like having the conversations that what I was experiencing, and then telling them about it, they were like, oh my, what the heck? Like even them being able to also engage in what I was doing, I think was a really fun thing, not just for me, but them seeing me grow as a human. So I think that that is also a really nice thing of perspective of others, but then also like learning to find yourself, I think, a little bit as well. And then also just getting to know bioethics, right? It's something that I feel like I'm also very passionate about now. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I, so, I mean, obviously being the director of the program, I actually meet with a lot of prospective students through this process. And I think one of the things I love to stress is kind of everything you covered, right? We've got diversity of perspective, we've got diversity of experience, but you also make lifelong friends and you connect with people and you have this common experience. This shared experience, which is really unique. But it's not just a personal experience, it's also something that can grow you professionally. I often say to prospective students that bioethics and medical humanities both has personal stakes, but also professional stakes, right? It can impact us personally, and we're all going to come across healthcare issues and humanity issues in whether it's our loved ones or ourselves. And so this knowledge can help us, but also, in a professional sense, as we've talked mostly about. So, of course, I'm biased that I would love for a lot of people to do our program because I really think it can help. And as Jacoby said, it's not going to hurt you. It's only going to help. So I do, we just have a few minutes left. I know that there's some people who are watching live. If anyone has a question they want to submit, they can put it in the Q&A and I can read it. I think, as we kind of wrap this up, one of the things I hope that comes across is we're a very welcoming environment. We're really personable. And as you can see, we stay in touch with our alums. Fela and I actually text, every now and then about how she's making progress on her degree, or we've even texted about like research questions, or
Yeah.
are you going to this conference? Like we should make sure we see each other. So, and as students progress, we love hearing from alums as they tell us where they're, going to next. I was really excited when I got an email from through the grapevine with an update on Jacoby being in law school. I thought that was awesome. And this is what happens, right? You send an email to one of the faculty and then they're like, hey, did you know so-and-so is here? And we're like, and for like when I was talking with Emily this past academic year, as she would give me updates on her med school applications and where you end up is the perfect place for you. And Jacoby, I thought the same thing when I heard that you were in law school, and I was like, that makes sense. Like it just makes sense. And so I love like getting to do these like catch ups and also talking about how this program impacted you. Okay, so someone anonymously asked this question. I think it's great. It's for you, Emily. And they also say that you don't have to answer it, but they're interested in what your response to the medical school question was of like, what's the biggest ethical issue and how would you fix
So part of medical school is you're not allowed to get too political. So that's like one barrier to my answer. So I said cultural humility. What I wanted to say is just like simply how many injustices that like are in medicine and like the practice of medicine. Because one of the things that you learn in the master's program is like Western medicine is just one style of medicine, and I never really thought of it other than that. I thought of it as black and white, and like there's a lot of things that Western medicine does correctly. Like there's science behind antibiotics, we all know that, but like that doesn't mean that like you giving an antibiotic to somebody else who doesn't believe in antibiotics isn't like an injustice. But I didn't want to get too political in my answer because that could easily have gone down a different rabbit hole. But I'm from Arkansas, and so one of the main healthcare crises we see here is maternal mortality rate. And the Delta region is along the Mississippi River in our eastern portion of the state. And once again, I didn't want to get too political, but if I was talking in terms of Arkansas, I would say that that's like at the top of my personal list of things that like I wish I, as a human, could fix. How I said I would fix it is like when I'm in class and we are having ethical discussions, and people start to go astray because they haven't had the background and they say things and it's not really what they mean, but it comes across as like sirens going off that like that is going to lead you down. Like we've already been down that path in history, so we don't need to go back down that path. In terms of like research, vaccines, and stuff like that, I do speak up, and it's been very well received by people. And just trying to educate your classmates is really the biggest thing I can do as a student.
it? Great. So we have a question, and I actually think I might be in the best position to answer this, but anyone else can too. So the question is, what kinds of career paths do you see students take if they choose not to pursue additional degrees after the master's program? So we have students who go on from this and they work in research. They may work in education. If they already have some like for some of our part-time students, maybe they already have another degree, and so they're going back into their space. We've had folks who have, worked in the public health area, and they do this program to add to their work. And so we do see a variety of things. I would say most commonly, students do this program and then they go on to the next phase of their education as it leads to their career path. But we do have students who end up working directly after the program. In a variety of ways. We see folks who have done lobby work or health policy work. They've worked at every level, local, state, federal, international. And while the example that, Fela and I are both PhD in healthcare ethics, we see people who get additional degrees that maybe aren't related directly to medicine, right? But we've had folks get degrees in history and sociology and anthropology, and you can see easily how those relate to bioethics and medical humanities. Yeah. Great question. So I think we are at time. I just want to say thank you so much to Emily, Jacoby, and Fela. I am so thankful that you were all able to join us and shared your experience and your perspective on this program. You can see that alums are very proud of the program. We think that it really can enhance someone's career path. So thank you all. Thank you to those who attended and to those who are watching the recording. If anyone has questions, you can always email us, bioethics@case.edu. I'm the person who primarily checks that email, and I can always forward you to the right person. And I'm sure and I'm going to volunteer our panelists. If you ever want to talk to an alum, I'm sure they'd be willing to talk to you as well. So let us know and we can connect you with them. So thank you, everybody, and I hope everyone has a good evening. Bye.